Welcome to the Happiness Podcast. I'm Dr. Robert Puff. I want to ask you a question. If I offered you a coin flip where heads you win $120, but if it lands on tails you lose $100, would you take that bet? Compared to the odds at Vegas, and mathematically, it's a really good bet. Psychologically, most people would refuse. Why? This may sound like a simple question, with though a surprising answer, a not very important answer, but the truth is, this propensity in us can radically shape the outcome of our lives. This was such an important study that the researchers Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky won the Nobel Prize in economics for their prospects theory. What they discovered was, though we think we are logical creatures, we are actually biological ones. They found that the psychological pain of losing something is mathematically twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. Why are we like this? It goes back to our caveman brain. Evolution built us this way. For our ancestors, gaining an extra day's worth of food was nice, pleasurable. But losing a day's worth of food meant starvation, death. Our brains evolved on the savannah for survival, but that same brain we're now trying to use to find happiness in the modern world. But here's the problem with that. Prioritizing safety over growth keeps us alive, but it doesn't make us happy. As a clinical psychologist working in private practice now for over 30 years, I've seen a lot of people surviving, but sadly, very few people actually thriving. I really love the people that I work with, but so often I want to reach over and say, please stop doing what you're doing. It isn't making you happy. But they feel safe. They feel secure, even though their lives are a mess. But it's a mess they know. It's what they're used to. It's their habits. Maybe life is very hard for me right now, but it's predictable. I know it's coming. If I take risks, if I change my life, that's scary. I don't know what's going to happen. It could actually get worse. And they're right. It could. But their life they're leading right now goes back to what Henry David Thoreau said so wisely. Most men live lives of quiet desperation. So how does this loss aversion trap us? Have you ever gone on a walk and someone had the garage door open and it was packed with stuff? There were no cars in that garage. There was just stuff. We can keep boxes of old clothes, broken electronics, or even inherited furniture we hate. We think, but I might need it, or it's worth something. But in reality, the mental weight of clutter costs us more in mental stress than any item is actually worth. We can be so terrified of loss of throwing it away, even though it can cause us so much stress. We've all seen or heard about the reality shows about hoarders, and if we watch these shows, we may think, what's wrong with these people? But the question we have to ask ourselves, are we, maybe in a lesser form, doing the same thing? And this too causes us stress. Have you ever seen a happy hoarder? Of course not. But we have to ask ourselves, are there ways that we are protecting our world out of fear? And remember, our brains are wired for survival, and the cavemen of the past, if they face loss, they face potential death. We're not going to die when we throw out some old clothes, but it can feel like that. That's why it's so powerful. Or what about people, maybe even us right now, that are staying in dead-end jobs? This has caused the sunk cost fallacy. We may stay in a miserable career for 15 years because we already put so much time into it. We're terrified of losing our seniority or our current salary, even if a new path offers immense joy and potential. I can't even tell you the number of times I've worked with people that are in this actual scenario, and I love helping them break free of this prison, because it's not a real life prison. It's a prison that we create in our minds. And that's one of the joys that I love about traveling. I often go to countries that aren't as wealthy or people have as much as we do here in the United States. And you know what I find? I find a lot of people still happy, even though they have so much less. Change can really scare us, particularly when it comes to our careers, because now we have bills to pay, we have responsibilities. But I also believe we have the responsibility, we have the potential to have beautiful lives. And any of us can. I deeply believe this, but it does sometimes include change, and change can be so scary. Or how about this example of loss aversion? We all know or have known, or potentially we're in one right now, a toxic relationship. Again, working with so many couples over the years, a client may stay in a painful, unfulfilling relationship simply because of fear of losing their partner, and or the fear of being alone is so scary to them that the potential of ending a relationship feels twice as painful, even though it's unknown what will happen, as the daily misery they're currently enduring. With both work and love, staying in the known, even if it's miserable, can be safer than branching out into the unknown, which feels so uncertain. But here's the paradox in life. If our hands grip around something we already have so tightly, even if it's mediocre, we can't open our hands to receive something beautiful. Herman Hesse wrote, "Some of us think holding on makes us strong, but sometimes it's letting go." It doesn't happen all the time, but I know we all know people who have let go of something they're hanging on to because of fear, because of the unknown, and then they branch into perhaps a completely different degree, or maybe move to a different state or even another country, and they start thriving or living, for many, for the first times in their life. So let's talk about the ultimate Reinvent Your Life memoir, Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. The story starts with Liz hitting rock bottom, lying on her bathroom floor, realizing her perfect life and marriage just aren't working. So she does the unthinkable. She leaves everything behind for a year-long journey across 3 countries to find herself. In Italy, she learns the art of pleasure and eats a lot of life-changing pasta. In India, she moves into an ashram to find inner peace through grueling meditation and prayer. And then in Bali, she looks for balance and ends up finding unexpected love right when she's finally content being alone. It's a classic hero's journey for anyone who's ever felt loss. It's messy, it's soulful, and it's a reminder that sometimes you have to lose balance to find a better way to live. And if you haven't read the book, or you're not much of a reader, there's also a movie made out of it where Julia Roberts plays the main character. I highly recommend it. Or if you haven't seen it in a while, watch it again. So how do we hack this evolutionary biology that can get us in so much trouble? The first thing we can do is create what we call the clean slate reframe. When deciding on whether to keep something, a job, a habit, an item, don't ask, should I get rid of this? Instead, imagine you don't own it yet and ask, if I didn't already have this, how much would I sacrifice to get it today? If the answer is 0, let it go. The next thing we can do is name the fear. When we feel paralyzed by a decision, say out loud, my brain is doing its 2-to-1 loss trick right now. This is biology, not reality. Naming it takes away its power. And then we can do a third thing, which is focus on the gain. Since our brains naturally highlight the loss, we must consciously and aggressively, vividly imagine the gains. We write down exactly what our lives will look like when we are finally free of the clutter, the bad habit, or even the toxic situation. I know it can be scary because sometimes we don't know what it's going to look like, and the uncertainty can create fear, but that fear can paralyze us. And if we're doing something today that isn't bringing us deep peace and happiness in the here and now, then we need to begin to make some changes. Maybe small ones at first, but we do need to make changes. And these changes can encourage us to keep going, to keep growing, to keep finding and looking for the beauty and wonder of life. One of the pivotal, life-changing choices that I made in my life happened when I was an undergraduate at university. That summer, one of my friends had gone to Europe, traveling around by Eurail Pass and staying there for 3 months, staying at hostels, seeing lots of Europe, and having a wonderful time. Well, that same summer, I got a job working at a packing plant. It was about 80 hours a week, and it was the worst job I ever had in my entire life. But thankfully, I made a good amount of money, and I decided I wanted to save every penny I made that summer and go to Europe like my friend had for the entire 3 months. And I did. Several members of my family weren't very approving of my decision, but I went anyways, and it completely changed my life. If I had listened to my relatives, if I let my fears get out of control, because I only had $2,000 for the entire summer, and that included airfare, and I didn't have any relatives that I could call to send me money if I ran out of money. But that one decision has shaped my life in countless ways, and I'm so thankful that I made it. Right now, we may be facing some very difficult decision that we can make, should make, or ought to make. But with all decisions, there is the potential for loss. But if life isn't working already right now, perhaps it's time to open our hearts, to look deep within and say, what changes can I make right now to make this life, this journey through life, better? We all really can have beautiful lives, but it isn't always easy, and sometimes it includes risk. But if we keep going, if we never give up, we'll find when we finally take that last breath, we'll say, that was a good life. Thank you for joining me on the Happiness Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the podcast, please go to www.happinesspodcast.org. That's happinesspodcast.org. Until next time, accept what is, love what is.